Hey everyone, Rizzo here, and welcome to the 5th installment of my season-wide Cold War Zombies review series. In today's episode, we'll be taking a look at the game's third DLC experience, Mauer Der Toten. However, before diving into the map, per the norm, there's a lot to catch up on in the world of Cold War Zombies. Now, despite what YouTubers and Reddit may tell you, there's actually been a ton of changes and content added to Cold War in the recent months. I realize I've used that exact same bit before, but I'll stop using it when it stops being so accurate. First and foremost, we have the long-awaited changes to high-round zombie health. For those unaware, with Season 3 Reloaded, Treyarch increased the maximum health of zombies from 30,000 to 120,000 in an attempt to make high rounds more challenging. However, they didn't adjust zombie damage output, sprint speed, the wonder weapons, most of the support streaks, or lethal equipment, so these changes were met with almost universal disdain. These changes were so poorly thought out that it was enough to dissuade many players from even attempting high rounds, including myself. With the launch of Mauer Der Toten, the health cap was lowered from 120,000 down to 60,000. Along with the Season 3 Reloaded headshot multiplier changes, this makes it so that the game plays similarly to how it did at launch, but with one key exception: headshots are much more valuable than they used to be. At launch, it didn't really matter if you shot a zombie in the chest or the head, you were going to cut through them like butter regardless. Now, if you're not mixing in at least a couple of headshots, the overall time to kill will be substantially more punishing. Personally, I really like this change. It rewards players with sharp reflexes and those that just spam left trigger with Deadshot. Everybody wins! A new feature was added to all round-based maps called dynamic wall buys. With this feature, wall buys now have a chance to upgrade their current rarity at the end of every 5th round. This makes it so that in the higher rounds, every single wall weapon will eventually be gold. Not only that, but it gives you the chance at a head start in progression. You can progress through the map as normal, but some matches, you may find that the blue Spaz 12 on Maschine is now purple on round 6, or that purple bullfrog in Firebase Z may very well be gold by the time you get done with the Aether reactors. This is a wonderful change that gives wall weapons a purpose again, because previously, aside from early game, there was literally no reason to buy a wall weapon compared to just hitting the box. Another new feature was added to the round-based maps called the Rampage Inducer. In the spawn room of every map, a special essence container can be activated that makes all zombies super sprint, increases their aggression, removes respawn delay, and as time goes on, the amount of time between rounds gets shorter. This isn't just great for getting through the quote-unquote boring parts of a zombies match, but it can also be used by quest speedrunners to achieve completion times previously thought impossible. For normal play though, cutting the effect at round 20 creates a massive whiplash in game pace. However, Treyarch seems to be well aware that players love this feature and want it to last longer, so they're already looking into extending the round cap. Personally, I'd like to see its effect extended all the way till round 55, so that if you want, you can have zombies moving at their maximum speed all match. But that's just me. I love my matches to be brutal, yet fair clusterfucks where the slightest mistake means death. A new craftable grenade called the LT-53 Casimir, which is a nice little callback to Ascension, was added to the workbench and zombie loot drop pool. Just like the Gersh device of old, the Casimir opens a black hole that sucks in and kills all standard zombies at any round. Players can also jump through these holes to teleport to a random location on the map. I'd really recommend not doing this on the higher rounds though. The amount of times I've teleported right into a horde of zombies and just instantly died is, well, it's not that many, but the few times that it has happened, it's been really annoying. A reimagined form of Mule Kick Soda was added to all zombies modes in Cold War. This perk allows players to hold a third weapon, and like Tombstone before it, its upgradable tiers aim to make it a more appealing choice by duct taping quality of life changes and parts of older perks to it. Tier 1 gives you a free piece of whatever equipment you just crafted at a workbench. At Tier 2, those little ammo clips dropped by zombies in Outbreak and Onslaught can now be dropped in the round-based maps. At Tier 3, stowed weapons will start to refill their clips automatically, which is fantastic for LMGs or just holdout strategies in general. Tier 4 gives you a 25% chance to magically keep a thrown piece of equipment, including Casimir's. And at Tier 5, your Mule Kick weapon is given back when you rebuy the perk after going down, just like its modifier effect in Black Ops 4. These new tiers make Mule Kick an incredibly strong perk that I'd highly recommend picking up every match. Now, unfortunately, all of this was marred by a handful of very problematic glitches upon release. Upon repurchasing Mule Kick, your third weapon slot could become corrupted, for lack of a better term. When this happened, all attachments were removed from the weapon, and you could no longer apply custom mods to any weapon that occupied that slot for the rest of the match. Sometimes you wouldn't even get your weapon back, and other times, when you went to pack-a-punch the weapon you got back, the pack machine would just spit out its attachments and they just sat there taunting you. These bugs were thankfully fixed with the August 5th update, but this perk was flat out broken for more than 2 weeks. Look, I get it. Making a game is a massive pain in the ass, especially with how strict the post-launch schedule is with Call of Duty titles, and sometimes you just don't have the time to fix everything. I get it, but the way this perk and much of Season 5 in general launched is unacceptable. And it really pains me to say that, you know? Because I really do love Cold War zombies. But an important distinction between a fan and a fanboy is being able to admit when something isn't right. Fact of the matter is, Mule Kick and Season 5 in particular were impressively broken. From the reintroduction of the parachute camera bug, being unable to obtain a 9th perk in Onslaught, to the weapons blueprint feature just being completely busted, someone at the top at Activision needed to set aside profits for, I don't know, fucking 5 seconds, take a look at this and publicly delay it to give the developers at Treyarch the time they needed to fix this before the content made it to the live build. Moving on, yet another perk was added to Cold War with the start of Season 5 as a Der Wunderfizz exclusive, for now at least. One of my personal favorites from Black Ops 4, Death Perception. When purchased, it outlines all enemies through walls within a 20-meter radius, and its skill tiers aim to oddly transform it into a quality of life perk. Tier 1 increases minimap update speed. 2 gives on-screen indicators when enemies are behind you, 3 increases salvage gains by 20%, 4 increases armor penetration damage by 25%, and finally, at Tier 5, loot chests, map resources, items, and intel pickups are outlined through walls. To be honest, even without all the new features tied to it in Cold War, I never really got the hate behind this perk. Sure, it wasn't the most impressive one of the bunch, but being able to see a zombie around a corner is really invaluable. I'm a information is power kind of player, and I can't tell you how many times I've had an entire run saved in Black Ops 4 because I had that little heads up that a zombie was about to cut off my exit and I quickly needed to get my sights up. And one last thing that I never even thought of until someone mentioned it on Twitter, this perk is really helpful for the deaf or hard of hearing, because those players aren't going to be able to hear a zombie that's around a corner or one that's about to attack from behind. Speaking of perks, as of Season 5, you no longer need to pay to reacquire your Tombstone cash. I'm not too sure how I feel about that one. I kinda like the balancing factor of trading in points to get back on your feet. Oh well, I know that I was in the minority on that one, so I can completely understand the decision to remove the buyback cost. A new wand field upgrade called Tesla Storm was added in alongside Season 5 as well. When activated, you get your own personal storm cloud. This storm creates a protective field around the user that stuns and damages all enemy types, at least when it's fully upgraded. However, when in close proximity to an ally, a Tesla chain forms between you, which can be used to simply damage more enemies, or cut off a choke point to an objective, or give your friend some time to save a downed ally. Not a bad field upgrade by any means, but it simply cannot compete with Aether Shroud, Ring of Fire, Frenzied Guard, or even the newly buffed Frost Blast. And last but not least, a new support streak was added to the crafting table, the long-awaited Flamethrower. Like the other support streaks after the latest health pass, it's comically overpowered, with a single puff of flame killing standard zombies at any round. But I kinda like that. Cold War is clearly aiming for a make the player feel powerful approach, and this fits right in with that design philosophy. On the Outbreak side of things, god damn are we eating good! We got 2 new regions to play around in one season. Collateral, and the final Outbreak region, Armada, which are modified versions of the combined arms maps of the same name, a new transport objective that might need some slight tuning to its timers. Hey everyone, post-original script Rizzo here. With Season 5 Reloaded, this exact thing happened, and the timers were increased by 30 seconds. Tanks were added to the Outbreak zones, black chests, and Omega Supply choppers that drop absurd amounts of rare salvage upon destruction were added as uncommon world events. Disciples can now appear among the special enemy spawn pool, and best of all, the grapple hook gun from Black Ops 4 was added as an Outbreak exclusive craftable. When I saw that this was coming in the Season 5 roadmap, I was a bit ambivalent. but I drastically underestimated just how much this thing would change up how I approached the maps. For example, previously I hated trying to pack a punch on Duga, because if I forgot which zipline went straight to the top, I had to climb a comical amount of stairs. Now, I'm excited when I get Duga, because I can try and chain multiple grapple uses together to get to the top of the tower in seconds. The main structure in Sanatorium is less annoying now too. Just look up, aim, and grapple right to the roof. You can zip between the trees on Alpine and Ruka if you're fast enough, grab onto the dragon relics as they ascend, collect essence canisters easier, and so much more. Even better is that it's only 250 green salvage for 5 uses, or 10 with Mule Kick, and they drop fairly frequently from zombies and loot chests. It's clear that Treyarch wants you to go nuts with these things. And like I said, this was an addition that shook up how I approached the maps way more than I thought it would. You know, I thought we'd be done with Outbreak after Mauer Der Toten, but I'm delighted to see that it got just a wee bit more support before they shifted focus to DLC 4 and Vanguard. Personally, were they not doing Vanguard this year, I would have loved to have seen more of the combined arms maps get repurposed for Outbreak, like Crossroads. That map sucks for Onslaught, but it would have been perfect for Outbreak. And speak of the devil, Onslaught. There's only a couple changes to discuss this time around. Onslaught Containment was added back in at the start of Season 4, and has been around for so long that it seems to be a permanent playlist now. Actually, hold on, let me ask Kevin Drew on Twitter. Okay, yeah, it is. Wicked. Standard Onslaught got 4 new maps: Collateral, Rush from Black Ops 2, Echelon, and one of my all-time favorites, Drive-In from Black Ops 1. Each of these new maps are really fun, especially Drive-In, but Collateral just does not work. Because of the map's sheer size, the amount of downtime between surges is so mind-numbingly boring. So much so that it's the only map I don't have a golden chalice on, because I just can't be fucked to do it. The mode's elites were slightly tuned as well. Instead of spawning in 2 standard mimics or manglers during their respective rounds, the Outbreak HVT variant will spawn in their place. Now, I really love this change, and on the surface, this might not seem like a big deal, but there is a completely biased reason as to why I like this so much. Let's quickly flash back to my review of Onslaught's overhaul. To fix these elites, maybe have them like the Horde patrols in Outbreak where they spawn alongside a ton of zombie reinforcements? Or maybe upgrade the Manglers and Mimics to be more like the HVT elites or something along those lines. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. So remember last time how I said that someone at Treyarch must be watching my videos? I was only half serious. But this change, along with them suspiciously rebalancing the health cap to the exact number I've been preaching for months, has me 100% convinced of it. And there's also that order calling card that looks exactly like one of my renders. Like, come on, either that's a huge fucking coincidence or you didn't even try to hide it. Not that I care, of course, I think it's cool. So if you're watching this right now, Mr. or Mrs. Treyarch employee, hi, I hope you're having a wonderful day. And thanks for fixing the Mimic head glitch, by the way. That one bugged the hell out of me. So, with all the changes covered, I think it's finally time to dive into Mauer Der Toten. Starting with the positives, as I'm inclined to do, we have one of the most important pillars of any good zombies map, the map design. Taking place amidst an outbreak zone set near the Berlin Wall, Mauer Der Toten features the most varied amount of play spaces seen in Cold War yet. The streets are very wide open and provide a good amount of breathing room for those who aren't comfortable with the super hectic CQC style of play. Then you have the apartments, which are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. These are almost as tight as your mom and allow for very chaotic gameplay, especially in the higher rounds where all the zombies are super sprinters. And for those of you who enjoy putting your back to the wall with a team, don't worry, there's some truly awesome holdout spots in this one. You can sit in the CIA safe house by the rappel line, or inside the Wonder Fizz room, or the one everyone knows of, Agent Jack's bedroom. This room is one of the best I've seen in a long time. There's only 2 spots to watch, but if you get overrun, there is literally no way out. With this, Mauer Der Toten takes the varied map design of Firebase Z and builds on it to an even greater extent than Firebase Z did from Die Maschine. And I think this is one of the many reasons why Mauer Der Toten has become so beloved among the community. With this map design, there's something for literally everybody. Another trait carried over from the prior maps is its accessibility. Just like Maschine and Firebase Z, Mauer Der Toten holds the player's hand just enough so that they can get their perks and pack-a-punch the weapons with no trouble. But after that, you're on your own. If you want to uncover the quest or some of the little side Easter eggs, you have to put in at least a little bit of effort to explore on your own. So, I've talked map design, let's talk about some of the critters that inhabit it. The most important of which, the poster child of Mauer Der Toten, the Disciple of the Forsaken. Okay, their actual name is just Disciple, but come on, the moniker, the Disciples of the Forsaken, just sounds so much more cool. Disciples first show up as part of the map's pack-a-punch process and can spawn in alongside normal zombies afterwards. Unlike most enemies, they don't really aggro the player. Instead, they'll focus on hovering just out of sight to strengthen their allies, similar to, but nowhere near as oppressive as, the Ice Catalyst from Chaos. What makes these guys less oppressive is the fact that when killed, any zombie the Disciple took over will immediately lose all of its buffs. That is a genuinely great balancing change. However, they still can and will attack the player if no zombies are nearby. As opposed to a standard melee swipe, they'll slowly drain the player's health to replenish their own. Now, this is almost never going to kill you, but if you let one drain you for too long, it can recover from 1 to full health. Now, unfortunately, despite the fact that they are pretty well balanced, Disciples kinda have the same problem that the Ice Catalyst did. Like I said, from a balance perspective, they're fine, because the player is so stupidly powerful that they can, at least in theory, always deal with whatever the game throws at them. But holy Christ, their spawn rates can be a bit obnoxious at times. And the last little gameplay element I want to discuss is the map's side quests. In true Zombies fashion, Mauer Der Toten features some little side quests to discover. However, unlike most of the ones in Maschine and Firebase Z, these ones are actually worth doing. Like, come on. After it was discovered, did anybody give a shit about the free jump pads in Firebase? Oh, you didn't know that that was a thing? Yeah, me neither until a couple weeks ago. Of course, there's your standard free Wonder Weapon quest, but then you have things like the Targets Easter egg, which grants a free Aether tool upon completion. Just like Outbreak's Fury Crystal events, if you utilize it at the right point in the game, Aether tools are easily the most valuable thing you can get your hands on in Cold War. Or Mr. Peaks' nightclub. Collect the parts to Mr. Peaks, and you'll be transported to the nightclub where you'll have to fight 3 waves of special enemies to receive a random loot chest. These loot chests can either be almost nothing, or you could get a special gold chest that gives you all sorts of weapons, a free perk, a full power meter, and conveniently has a free Cerberus that any player can pick up. A lot of players constantly say that maps need more Easter eggs or more things to do, and to an extent I can agree, but in the past in Zombies, a lot of these things don't really do anything, like the free Mega Gobblegum in Shadows of Evil. Sure, it's there, but how many times are you actually going to do it? Moving on from the gameplay, we have an improvement to one of the more common critiques of Cold War Zombies, its lack of personality. Since day one, this has been one of the most common critiques of the game mode. Personally, this didn't really bother me because of how much I love the core gameplay, but I could see where people were coming from. Mauer Der Toten aims to address this critique by injecting a lot more personality and charm into its writing. The most immediately apparent change in this category is the commander voiceover. Since Requiem Strike Team is now under Omega control after the second Outbreak quest, the old commanders have been replaced by Omega agents, Lev Kravchenko, Gorev, Dr. Yegor, and last but certainly not least, Dr. William Peck.
Don't worry, Requiem. I'm sure that this Klaus guy won't murder you. I mean, it clearly murdered your friends. But I'm sure you'll be fine.
Still a dickhead? Still love him. While Peck is easily the best, each of Omega's announcers have a lot of distinct personality and talk to the player much more than the Requiem ones. Gorev is a smug little shit, Peck is Peck, Yegor is... I don't really know how to describe it other than... You know those characters that seem normal on the surface and a bit boring, but you eventually find out are weird little cryptids? Yeah, he has that energy.
You know, I'm a bit of a klepto myself, so I collect... that's a different conversation.
And finally, Kravchenko fills the role of Weaver, the straight man of the group that the others bounce off of, but even he gets to sprinkle in some sarcastic little remarks every now and again.
Tempests were critical to my inversion warheads. Remember? The ones you sent to the bottom of the ocean.
Speaking of Weaver and Requiem's announcers, they're not entirely gone either. The director so graciously gave the map's wonder weapon, the Cerberus, AI speech with the voices and personality of the Requiem agents. Upon picking up a Cerberus, you'll be greeted by one of the 3 Requiem scientists, Mackenzie Carver, Peter Strauss, and Elizabeth Gray. And since they're not limited to cold analytical field operation overview like before, the lines they're given and their performances have a lot more personality here.
I'm the whole goddamn field artillery battalion.
Oh dear, we are making an awful mess. Oh well, that's tomorrow's problem.
I detest cassette tapes. They are an insult to music and are no match to vinyl.
But of course, if we're talking about personality, the most important element to discuss is this map's new character, Klaus, who acts as yet another Civil Protector clone. We've got like 5 of those now, right? Designed by Elizabeth Gray, Klaus was commandeered by the director of Requiem for an unspecified CIA mission in Berlin. However, due to him still being in the testing phase, he's prissy, easily annoyed, and constantly slings passive-aggressive remarks at everyone around him.
I would say I am disappointed, but I kind of expected you to fail miserably.
He also, humorously enough, doesn't understand social cues or the concept of human fragility. So if one were to give him a pat on the back for a job well done, he'd appreciate it and reciprocate. But because of his strength, he'd likely break your spine in the process. Now, despite all of these marked improvements, it doesn't necessarily mean that Dark Aether is now suddenly oozing with the personality of its predecessor or anything like that. But it's certainly a step in the right direction that I think a lot of players will appreciate. Another element that's been improved upon is the narrative. With the main quest of Mauer Der Toten, the story of Dark Aether has finally started picking up speed again. As much as I loved Outbreak's world building, that's all it really was. Because of all this world building, we had a wonderfully rich world, but nothing was actually happening in it for months. Sure, the 2 main quests provided a bit more in terms of narrative setup, but it still left me feeling a bit frustrated with the lack of actual progression. Mauer's quest and intel actually does quite a bit to move the plot forward. Valentina's true plan and family lineage is revealed, we finally understand what the mysterious force in the Dark Aether is, where it comes from, and what it wants. Then, in the map's ending, Samantha is shown to have become quite powerful, and we even get a little tease for what's next, with the director of Requiem seemingly having his own insidious agenda. But the thing I enjoyed most about this map's narrative was Valentina's story. Through the map's quest and intel, it's revealed that literally everything about her life was a lie. Her real name is actually Angelika Hannibal Vogel, and her father was Dr. Frederick Vogel, the lead researcher on the End Station project back in the closing hours of World War II. This also cutely explains the password for his computer in the main quest of Die Maschine, AHV, Angelika Hannibal Vogel. That's a cute little reference. Since a young age, Angelika's been manipulated by an ethereal being known as the Forsaken that took the form of her father. It led her on a lifelong journey to open a gateway to the Dark Aether so they could bring about the Third Reich. To do this, she fabricated the identity of Alexandra Valentina in an effort to get close to the Soviets. We're also shown that the discovery of the End Station tape wasn't an accident. She knew about it for years, but waited until she found someone desperate enough to actually take the bait. And that someone was Lev Kravchenko. During the early 80s, he was placed at the forefront of the Omega Group as punishment. It was a group that was expected to fail, and take his career down with it. So Angelika, seeing how desperate Kravchenko was to please the motherland and save his career, presented him the End Station footage, hoping he would see it as a way to regain his honor. And just as she planned, he fell for it without a moment's hesitation. As the group's research of the Dark Aether continued, Kravchenko, in a bit of an odd character twist, grew to genuinely care for Valentina, seeing her as the daughter he never had, which made Angelika all the more ecstatic when she eventually stabbed him in the back in Berlin. So with the main positives covered, let's talk about those little tiny things. You know the ones that don't necessarily demand their own segment, but still deserve mention regardless. You can toggle your flashlight at any time. I felt that the flashlight always turning on in darkened areas of Die Maschine kinda undercut the creepy atmosphere. Giving the player the option to explore without a flashlight makes navigating through the darkened streets of Berlin a lot more atmospheric. As soon as you spawn in, you're given a wonderful sense of nostalgia, as the map's opening tune features a reprise of the song from World at War that was repurposed for the classic round transition. just like the game over laugh in Firebase Z, this was another one of those Ratatouille critic moments that, all professionalism aside, just made me smile. I'm gonna give props to the entire soundtrack while I'm here. Every single new track absolutely slaps. The mule kick machine not only looks great, but actually has a charming bit of practicality added to it. When you buy the perk from its machine, the guns on the sides will fire in random directions, killing any zombie in range. For the first time in a zombies map, almost every single one of the game's special enemies makes an appearance. Most of them are just little cameos like the Tempest in the early game, and the Mimics during Mr. Peaks' dance club, but it really helps all the maps feel connected to one another in a small way. Previous examples include when the Keepers had the little cameo in Zetsubo no Shima, or when the Moishlers and Sizzlers showed up as boss rounds in the Tortured Path. These examples aren't anything big, but it was just enough to help the different parts of the game's world feel a wee bit more connected. Surprisingly, Chaos actually gets a slight nod here. In Mr. Peaks' nightclub, the instrumental version of Right Where We Belong, a song featured in Voyage of Despair, will play. With the large amount of positives covered, let's discuss the areas in which Mauer Der Toten falters. Mauer Der Toten introduces two new special enemies to the fray, the Tormentors and the Disciples. I've talked about the Disciples earlier, so let's talk Tormentors. These enemies fill the role that the Hellhounds previously occupied. They're high-speed, low-health suicide bombers that attempt to dislodge stationary players. And that's it. Mechanically, Tormentors are literally just the Hellhounds from Firebase Z, but with the visual and sound design of the Shadow Throne Sizzlers. Come on, I can't be the only one thinking it. While Disciples are very unique both from a behavioral and visual standpoint, the Tormentor feels like an underdeveloped last-minute addition, which is super disappointing when you put it against the game's other enemies. Look, just because the Hellhounds were fine, doesn't mean you can serve me the exact same thing again, and then just expect me to like it. Then again, I am a Call of Duty fan, so I'm not sure how much truth that statement holds. Another problem with the map's special enemy assortment is that heavy zombies are still here. That's it. That's the whole segment. And rounding out the map's cast, there's some returning faces to accompany our newcomers, Outbreak's Krasny Soldats, and Firebase Z's Manglers. On their own, I really like these enemies, but the problem arises in that, when combined with Tormentors and Disciples, sometimes the play space can become just a wee bit too annoying, especially in rounds exceeding 55. You'll be trying to focus fire on a Krasny, but also make sure that the Disciples behind you don't strengthen the zombies, while also dodging Mangler shots and making sure to keep Tormentors in an arm's reach. Now, don't misunderstand me. It's nowhere near as bad as, let's say, the Beast from Beyond, or some of the later Exo-Zombies maps, or even Gorod Krovi with its Valkyrie drones. But it can occasionally lead to those very obnoxious, okay, what was I even supposed to do kind of moments. Especially because somebody thought it would be really funny to put a Mangler spawn right next to the Wonder Fizz machine. Why did you do that? After how well balanced and utilized Firebase Z's enemy assortment was, it's a bit disappointing to see this map stumble in that category. Another area the map stumbles in is in its wonder weapon, or wonder weapons, I should say, the Cerberus. Starting out as a simple laser pistol with a copycat drone, the Cerberus can be converted into 3 different variants via mod kits dropped by zombies. The Swarm, which fires a barrage of lock-on micro-missiles, the Diffuser, a scattershot type weapon, and the Blazer, which, as the name implies, fires a burning hot laser beam that can cut through undead and the occasional steel door when the plot demands it. Each of these variants potentially fits a different style of play, and are really fun to use in the mid-rounds. But, like the die machines, they are wildly unbalanced. The base Cerberus and Swarm mod are just strong enough to hold off zombies in the higher rounds, but the others are a bit weak. Like, technically the Diffuser can get a one-shot kill at any round, but you have to barrel stuff the zombie and make sure the entire spread shot hits its head. That just isn't fun. With a weapon like this, you want to be able to clear an entire room in just a few shots. It is a wonder weapon after all. This continues the weird trend of Cold War, where Treyarch seems to not like wonder weapons being dominant forces in the map's meta. In Die Maschine, the die machines were, and still are, really unbalanced, and most of them aren't even worth— Hey. Okay, sorry to interrupt past me, but this entire segment that I wrote out is completely pointless now. I had this whole thing written and edited where I talked about how the legacy wonder weapons are kinda not great, but there's no reason to complain about that now. I decided to DM Kevin Drew on Twitter to ask if there were plans to tune the wonder weapons in the future. Turns out, in Season 6, legacy wonder weapons will be receiving adjustments after all. That's fantastic! But god damn, writing scripts for live service games is a real pain in the ass. Oh, and don't worry about me spilling the beans about what Kevin said on Twitter. I asked him if I could include this in the video, and he said yes. Look, I may be a shitposting little gremlin, but when the need for it arises, I can be professional. But let's get back to the Cerberus. The last issue I have with the Cerberi is that they just don't fit with the rest of the game's art style. They're way too clean and sci-fi-y, I guess? Here, to help illustrate what I'm talking about, let's look at some of Treyarch's more grounded wonder weapon designs. The Wunderwaffe DG2. Sci-fi is all hell, but its metal is imperfect, the stock is recognizable as a normal wood, and the glass bulbs just look like slightly modified light bulbs. It feels like it was made from materials in our world, despite its sci-fi appearance. The Ray K84 and the Die Machines follow this trend too. The Die Machine's grips look like something you'd see on an actual piece of military hardware. The optic on the Ray K is modeled after real-world red dots. Its stock and its receiver are very similar to a Kalashnikov's. The grenade launcher is modeled after a real-world grenade launcher, etc. Then we come back to the Cerberus, which feels like it came right out of a reality that's far beyond even an Ethereum-enhanced 1985. It's super clean, has all sorts of bright lights, and the copycat drone. I mean, come on, look at that. Now, no doubt, the Cerberus looks great, both from a design and material standpoint, but this is a design that just does not fit this game. It would be right at home in, let's say, Infinite Warfare, but in a Cold War shooter that's set in 1985, it just doesn't belong. And last but not least, Valentina's boss fight. While cool at first, especially her stupid crystal throne, like, come on girl, you didn't have to be that extra. From a gameplay stance, this fight quickly becomes tedious. You literally do the exact same thing 5 times. Fight a few elites, wait for Vogel's immunity phase to wear off, take the shield down, shoot her until the game says, "Nuh-uh, you can't kill her yet," and then follow her to another location. Rinse and repeat until a cutscene happens. Aside from one new attack where you can be instantly downed if you don't pay attention, the fight doesn't evolve in any meaningful way. Phase 5 of this fight isn't any more intense than Phase 1, and that is a huge problem. Short fights like Legion can get away with not evolving, because it's just chaos from beginning to end. Longer fights like this need to have a gradual build-up until that final crescendo where you just barely succeed. Call of Duty's best example of this, by a long shot, is Mephistopheles from Infinite Warfare. The fight starts out fairly bog standard. Dodge some fireballs, suck up some ghouls, and damage the symbols on his body. But every time a new phase starts, he gains a new move that's incredibly deadly if you mess up. And these moves stack throughout the fight until the very end, where he throws literally everything he has at you in one last desperate bid to stop you. This fight not only looks and sounds great, but it's an incredibly well-made, difficult, yet fair fight with a great sense of escalation. With that in mind, let's go back to Angelica. Her fight is certainly an improvement over Firebase Z's Orda, particularly due to how insanely good the soundtrack is, but after how good Legion's fight was, it's super disappointing to take a step back. Thankfully though, this disappointment doesn't last too long, as the ending makes up for it, and then some. After using Angelica's energy to power the Ethereum nuke, you need to defend Klaus as he carries it into the Dark Aether to close the portal to our world. Unlike the boss fight, this final push is really great. The execution in every aspect is just perfect, and it actually got the first genuine laugh out of me of Dark Aether.
Oh, fuck.
To have such an important, heroic sacrifice undercut by a completely in-character reaction from Klaus made me laugh really hard. So with the good, the bad, and everything in between covered, let's talk nitpicks. If you go down and activate Tombstone Soda while holding the radiation device, you can't actually pick yourself up. This is because while in Tombstone Shadow, you can't interact with anything in the environment, so the radiation device's pickup trigger overrides the revive prompt. I really don't like this map's Pack-a-Punch camo. Thank God for the camo disabling feature. Yegor's commander icon. He doesn't even look like a human. The buildings outside the playable space look pretty bad. Not comically bad like the buildings in Shadows of Evil, but still bad enough to be distracting. The power switch model isn't properly aligned with its frame. A dust decal in the spawn room doesn't apply properly to a television and clips through it. So overall, Mauer Der Toten is a bit of an oddity. It improves on many of the commonly critiqued aspects of Cold War zombies, such as narrative and personality, but stumbles in others. The wonder weapons are a mixed bag, tormentors are just kinda there, the special enemy spam can get a bit obnoxious in the higher rounds, and some of the art direction feels at odds with the rest of the experience. But what makes the map such an oddity is that I do really like it, but I just can't seem to love it like everyone else. And to be honest, I don't even know why. It's kind of like my thoughts on Buried, but to a lesser extent. From an objective stance, Buried and Mauer Der Toten are really good, and they have a lot of cool new additions, but something about it just doesn't click for me. Oh well, I'm still happy to see so many people liking it, even if it doesn't 100% work for me. Well, that's all for today. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and if you did, you can check the description for a complete playlist of all my Cold War Zombies reviews. And with that, the rest of the video is just general channel update stuff. So if you're not interested in that, you can click off now. So, what's next? Well, due to the surprising amount of encouragement I received when I mentioned it last video, I'm actually stepping a bit outside of my comfort zone and working on a comprehensive review of Persona 3, including Fez, Portable, and small parts of the theatrical adaptations. Okay, review is a bit of a stretch. If you remember the video I made on Logan all the way back in 2017, it's kind of like that. A video where I mainly just focus on what I love so much about these pieces of media instead of my standard good, bad, and conclusion segments. Now, I'll be 100% honest, I have no idea when this one will be done. Persona 3 on its own is a 100-hour experience. Add the answer and you get another 30 on top of that. Add Persona 3 Portable and you get another 100 on top of that. So I'll probably just work on it alongside my inevitable review of DLC 4 and Outbreak. As for Vanguard, I'm not going to promise anything because if I like it, sure, I'd be more than happy to make videos on it. But if I don't like it, to put it lightly, I'm not going to waste my time making videos on something I don't enjoy. Oh, right, the map tier list video I mentioned a while back. That one's on hold indefinitely. I got about a third of the way through the video, which is about 15 reviews, and then I realized I don't like how the project was coming out. The pacing wasn't right, the structure was all over the place, and I wasn't happy with it, you know? It's unfortunate, and I know some of you were really looking forward to it, but if I'm not happy with it, I don't release it. I don't make a dime off of these videos, and I haven't for years. So I have literally zero excuse to half-ass content or put out something that I'm not happy with. It just doesn't feel right releasing a video where I'm not putting my best foot forward, you know? Shitpost videos don't count, by the way. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.